Greetings. This is Doc Ock coming to you live and direct from Black Facts Headquarters Central with another installment of Doc Ock at noon and 9. All right, so let's see what we got for you tonight. Well, we got some good stuff for you. We're continuing on with the story of Abraham Hannibal and the Raiders of the Sands. All about the young man from Ethiopia and his travels throughout the land of Ethiopia and even beyond the borders of the Empire of Ethiopia. But before we get into it, you know we got a couple things to do. Number one, if you're watching this on Facebook, give us a like. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. And then go ahead and spread the word far and wide to all who will listen about Black Facts and what we do here. That's right. Turn on your friends and your family too. And tonight's proverb is from Cameroon. The proverb is, an elephant will reach to the roof of the house. So, do you really want an elephant in your house? We always talk about the elephant in the room, but we don't talk about how do you fit him in there. So, an elephant will reach to the roof of the house. And that is a proverb from Cameroon. Meanwhile, let's see what Abraham Hannibal is up to over here. Let's just see. What is he up to today? Oh, and looky here. What do we have there? Nothing but the family crest of the, I'm not sure if that's the crest of the Pushkins or Abraham Hannibal. I believe this is the family crest of Abraham Hannibal. Yeah, I don't think this is Pushkin's crest, but it's one of the two. Okay, so it's in the family. But at any rate, we have the crest there, and you see the elephant prominently displayed on the crest with the trunk up, not down, because that's always been known to be bad luck for some reason. So we're in chapter 10, African Zion, or as we say in Ethiopia, Zion. 41 days the journey took from, what is the name of the place? How do you say it? I have to go back and look at my map here. Oops, let's see, wait a minute. Where is that place at again? What's the name of that place? Here we go, here. From, gotta get my glasses too. Oh, here we go, Dibarwa, right. So 41 days from Dibarwa to Gondar, the capital of the province that the Lord of the Sea resides in. 41 days the journey took. Abraham kept count. Every night when he curled up inside his cloak to sleep, whether in a village hut or in the compound of a rich local lord, or in a rough shelter of branches against the mountain cold, or most often simply under the stars, he cut a mark in his stick. He had his own white mule, Butterfly, who had a sweet face and a loving nature, but got her name because she had a mind that flitted madly from one thing to another. At first, it was fun riding her, being up so high, but he soon took to walking most of the time, while she went ahead, so that he could chat to the donkey drivers. His father was riding his favorite stallion, Thunder. Abraham had ridden Thunder. Once, it had been 2 whole dry seasons ago, 3 of his half-brothers had dared him to, and he'd done it. They'd been herding the cattle one hot noontide, and they'd found the slave who was looking after their father's horses fast asleep. Abraham cut the rope hobbling Thunder's front legs himself, and his brothers had lifted him up. He could never have mounted that great shining ebony cliff by himself. He had been too small to grip Thunder's flanks with his knees, so he had twisted his hands into the stallion's mane, wrapped his legs round his neck, and then whispered into his ear, "Go, Thunder, go! Go like the wind!" And Thunder had gone, galloping madly, bucking and leaping through the thorn scrub, over the dry stream beds, round the great stands of umbrella cactus, further and further toward the wild lands, until at last he had stumbled over a stone and pitched the boy onto the hard, dry earth. It was growing dark by the time Abraham limped home. Thunder had made his way back hours before. Pharez beat him, of course, but not nearly as hard as he might have done, and Abraham thought he could see a glint of pride in his father's eyes as he shouted at him, "What business has a boy of your age riding his lord's horses? Besides, it had been worth it for the swoosh of the wind on his skin and the rushing of the stony ground below Thunder's hooves." But Abraham was 2 whole years older now, and he was leaving his home and his brothers behind. There were steep and chilly mountains to cross soon after leaving home, then the Mareb River. It was far wider than he knew it at home, but not too deep, and even silly Butterfly and the loaded donkeys waded across without too much trouble. Then there was a long, long plain where mountains sharp as knife blades, thin as sheets of parchment, jabbed up sheer into and filled his dreams at night. Then they arrived in the town of Aksum, which looked quite ordinary at first sight, a bit like Debarwa, but not as big or as busy, but where Abraham's beloved stories of the kings came alive. First of all, they went to pray in a church quite different from every church Abraham had ever seen, for the churches he knew were all round, and this one was corners. "You are doing an act that God will remember on Judgment Day, Abraham, by praying in the church of Our Lady of Zion," said Pharez, the Lord of the Sea, as they kissed the doorpost of the church and went to stand in front of the Holy of Holies. Why is that? Because the tablets of the law that Moses brought down from Mount Sinai and the Ark of the Covenant that he built to hold them are here in this church, St. Mary of Zion. There, right in front of us. Abraham looked at the Holy of Holies, its wooden doors closed tight and its outside walls covered with paintings like bigger versions of the pictures in Abba Michael's stories of the kings, and tried to imagine what was inside. Do you remember the story, little monk? You mean how the Emperor Menelik took the Holy Ark of the Covenant from the temple of his father Solomon in Jerusalem and brought it to his mother's land? Is that the story you're asking me? Do I remember? Yeah, I remember it. Good boy. This is the land of Sheba, here around Aksum. This is Queen Makata's country. Outside are the great stones that the grandsons of Menelik built. So when they had prayed, they went out to marvel at the gigantic, solid stone obelisks that were old when Jesus was born. So people said. One of them had long since fallen and smashed, but another towered over the huge old sycamore tree behind, taller by far than any building Abraham had ever seen. January 1703, chapter 11, the terrible river. But for all the marvels of Aksum and the Queen of Sheba's country, it was the days ahead that really burnt themselves into Abraham's memory. Like day 19, the day they crossed the terrible river. Its valley was terrible enough. A long, slow, tricky climb down, the magnificent tribute horses and the loaded donkeys and mules behind and in front of them, slipping and stumbling in the loose, dry soil, and the air getting hotter and heavier with every step down, although the sun was not yet up. The big rains were over long ago, but the river was full, fast moving, and very wide. As they got nearer the bottom of the valley, Abraham riding Butterfly and Phares, the Lord of the Sea, on Thunder, they could see the wide sandy beach below them, full of warriors and donkey drivers, rushing towards the water, screaming at the tops of their lungs, hurling stones and bits of branch, anything that came to hand, into the water, firing their muskets. Abraham looked wildly from this scene of madness to his father's face, and in spite of himself, reached over as if to take hold of his arm. His father laughed. Don't worry, they're just chasing away the crocodiles. We've no time to lose. We need to start crossing at once. I don't want anyone spending the night down here. There's disease in these hot valleys. They watched while the men let the horses drink and then started leading them into the water. The valley echoed with sound of neighing, shouting, and cursing, and then the first horses started swimming across, their riders hanging onto their tails. A cheer went up from Abraham's side when the first horse and rider came up, dripping on the other bank. Abraham went to give Butterfly and himself a drink, keeping a careful lookout for crocodiles, and then tied her up in the shade of a tree. She'll need all the rest she can get if she's going to swim across that, he muttered to himself. He didn't like to think what he might need to make the same journey. Meanwhile, the donkey and mule drivers were starting to unload their pack animals. How are the loads going to get across, Father? You'll see. Look. Behind him on the bank, the donkey drivers and a crowd of men and women from the last village were gathered round and were doing mysterious things with ropes and sticks and animal skins. Abraham went across to investigate. Rafts! Are you making rafts? The villagers nodded. The ground was piled with blown up goat skins like heaps of headless bodies. He picked one up, and it was light as a handful of cotton. They were tying them underneath rough wooden platforms. Abraham looked from the rafts to the enormous stacks of goods that needed to get across and exclaimed, "Are we ever going to do it?" He thought of the bright silks and velvets inside the bundles. They would never survive a wedding, and although he didn't know much about guns, he knew they didn't like water either. About half the donkeys and mules were across by now, and the Lord of the Sea announced, "Right, let's get us two across now. Not nervous, are you, little monk? I'll be right next to you." Abraham grinned brightly and set about strapping his few belongings on the Butterfly's back. It all started off fine. Butterfly waded in with only a bit of head tossing and eye rolling, and then he followed. The water felt very warm. Soon it was up to his chest, and he knew that he'd have to let his feet come up from the bottom. He twisted Butterfly's tail firmly round one hand and started swimming. He could feel Butterfly thrusting strongly through the water, pulling him across. The current was strong, but the mule was stronger. To his left, the upstream side, he could just see out of the corner of his eye his father and Thunder doing the same. "Hey, little monk, enjoying your swim?" He was concentrating too hard to answer, but as a matter of fact, it was almost beginning to be fun. And everything carried on fine until about the middle of the river. Then he never knew how everything turned hideous. There were donkeys and mules swimming across on his right, the downstream side, as well as in front of him. Maybe Butterfly got kicked by the donkey in front of her, or some water went up her nose, or maybe it was just that the current got too strong. But suddenly she started panicking, whinnying and choking as she breathed in water, plunging and rolling and splashing. He held on to her tail for dear life as he was pulled this way and that. His head tugged under the water and out again. He choked as he breathed in a great gasp of water. Suddenly, he felt a hand under his armpit and knew that his father was holding him. He let go Butterfly's tail, but Butterfly must have kicked the donkey on her right because it started panicking too, bucking and snorting and spluttering. By the time Thunder had pulled him and his father across, and they were standing, panting and dripping out on the bank, watching the river, Butterfly had calmed down and was swimming quietly across as though nothing had happened. But the donkey that Butterfly had kicked was being swept downstream in an awful hubbub of splashing and choking. Every watcher stood silently following it with his eyes until just before the distant bend in the river, a long, scaly shape slid off a rock and swam towards the beast. There was a sudden stillness, and the donkey vanished under the water. Wonder what happened to that donkey. I'm not going to say. I'll let you think about it for yourself and see what you come up with. Maybe you have an idea that I don't have, but I got a pretty good idea about what just happened to that donkey. And that should give you an idea of just how precarious life really is, how dangerous it is. That one minute you can be here and the next minute you cannot, just as easily. So that's why I say to everybody, all the children in particular, that we need to get our rest, go to bed as early as possible so we can get up as early as possible and enjoy as much of the day as we can, because every single day is precious. Every single day is divine. Every single day we should treat as if it is our last. But in the meantime, what I want you to do is treat this moment as if it's your last, and lay your little head down on your little pillow, on your little bed, and close those eyes while you wait on that sun to rise. And when you feel those sunbeams beaming down on your eyes, that's when you'll know it's time to rise and shine, oh chillin' of mine. In the meanwhile, all you adults out there, we got a few tasks for you to do. Number one, if you're watching on Facebook, give us a like. If you're on the tube, give us a thumbs up. And last but not least, go ahead and make a donation to Black Facts. Very easy to do. Use our website, www.blakfacts.org. We got it right here on the sign. It might be backwards. Flip it around in your mind. You can get it right. And or you can do it right below either one of our live streams on Facebook or on YouTube. The only thing is, if you're on your mobile, you need to go to notifications. In the meanwhile, we're going to say peace out without a doubt, with justice, because anything less disgusts us, and we don't like being disgusted, although we do like if you discuss us. Peace at least. And let me just give a wave out to Tony over there. We see you over there. Glad to have you with us tonight. And in the meanwhile, we're going to our extra. Extra, extra.